Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. First, thanks for coming by. I appreciate you visiting my channel. If you wouldn't mind, hit the like button before you leave. That helps out a lot. And I wanted to give a special shout out to all my patrons over at Patreon. I really appreciate your support. And if you're interested in seeing what that's about, you should check out the link in the video description. I also have a link if you feel like supporting me by buying me a cup of coffee. That's down there too as well. Not necessary, but I do appreciate it when you do that. But definitely check out the Patreon. There's all sorts of exclusive content going up there pretty frequently. So thanks again, patrons. Today's topic is going to be talking about the pros and cons of using stone beads in bezel settings, and what are some different things you have to think about if you do that. Okay, let's see. I hope I got everything kind of in frame here. So I have some examples of some beads here that I want you to take a look at. In particular, the ones that are of interest to us if you're planning to bezel set a bead are the ones that don't have a hole going through the front of it like this one. This would not be suitable for bezel setting because it's got a great big hole going through it. There's other types though, however. You can buy strands of them and they're side drilled like this one. This was meant to be just hung on a string and hung like that. But it can also be set in a bezel. There's a whole different slew of different kinds of beads. There are some things that you need to look out for though. Sometimes some of the beads, like this piece of kyanite, the drill hole on this one goes from the two corners like that, and from one side you probably could get by with setting it in a bezel like that and nobody would ever see the hole. But a few of these from this string, the hole was not positioned very clearly in the center of the side. It was a little bit migrated to the front, to the back, and so those ones end up getting not used as you know, for bezel setting, because the hole would show up on them and it would look bad. So that's one of the things you need to look out for. So some of the advantages that I want to talk about this is, when I first started, I didn't have a lot of money to work with as far as buying materials and stones. And when visiting bead shows, it struck me that some of these beautiful stone beads that were drilled side to side would make great alternatives to cabs. Some of the cabs that I liked in the same materials might be $25, $30 a piece, whereas I could get a whole strand of side drilled beads in the same material for 20 bucks and get like 20 of them. So economically it was worth looking into. So price-wise, oftentimes you can get a lot more material to work with than if you're just buying plain cabochons. Some other things about them, a lot of times stone beads are super thick. This one, for example, if you look at it, is very, very thick and not very consistent in its thickness, so you'd have to keep that in mind if you were trying to set this. But your standard, like I normally use 3/16 inch bezel, and that's clearly too small for this. And I usually keep some 1/4 inch bezel around just for beads. That's usually tall enough for most of them. I do occasionally run into one like this. Probably the 1/4 inch wouldn't even work. It's a little bit too tall for that. So I would have to come up with some other way to set that if I was going to do that. Probably the reason I bought these and never set these ones. So other ones, however, like this one. So beautiful piece of poppy jasper. Cabochon like this made out of poppy jasper would cost you $20 or $25, I'm sure. I don't think I paid more than about $12 or $15 for a string of these. And here's one that I made out of one of those for my wife years ago, and you can see that it came out really nice, I thought. The back is open, so these particular ones have a curved bottom on them, which you can set in a closed bezel if you want to. I just seemed it had such a pretty back, I thought I would show the back as well. And you can see that the holes on either side are totally covered and not visible at all. So I think it turned out to be a beautiful pendant. So that is something that is advantageous sometimes. Some of the things that are kind of fun about beads is you get interesting cuts, like this one. You can see this one has a faceted cut on both sides, and that would make for an interesting piece. You don't see a lot of cabochons that are cut like that, or this shape in general, which is sort of I think it's 8-sided maybe, but not evenly 8-sided octagon. So some of that kind of stuff makes for some variety in your jewelry. That's kind of nice. But all of these are beads. And here's another example of some hematite side drill beads. Here's one of them that's been, you can see it's got a hole going through the side there, but set in bezels, they look beautiful. You know, it's a nice look. It's got a nice smooth surface, shiny. So yeah, that wouldn't really matter one way or another whether it was a cabochon or whether it was a bead. So in another video, I'll talk about setting non-traditional things. I brought this out. This is a ceramic bead, and that has an interesting kind of look to it, but it's really, really super thick. So some other video, I'll talk about doing some non-traditional setting of things. Somebody asked me to set a button one time. People do elk's teeth. There's all sorts of interesting things to set. So let's talk about the pros versus the cons. Okay, so pros, they're a lot cheaper. Another pro is there's tons of variety to choose from, and another pro might be that it helps you to practice your setting a variety of different kinds of stones too. I know I was intimidated by setting things that were unusually shaped at first, so having some weird shaped beads, trying to do that, that's good practice, and you might turn out with a really pretty piece too. Cons, some of the strings of beads, like they come in strings like this usually. As I said before, they may be drilled kind of off center like this so that one of the holes shows up. So you may have to discard some of them or use them for something else. But you'll probably get at least 50% good settable beads usually on a strand, but that is a drawback. The one thing I noticed, and it's not universally true, but one thing I noticed was that some of the beads that are side drilled stone beads, the surface quality isn't as good. They haven't taken the time to polish them quite as well. That's not always the case. Like these ones have a real nice polish to them, as do these. Here's another disadvantage. I don't know if you'll be able to see in this light, but this is a semi-translucent one. It's a really pretty stone, but you can actually see the drill hole going through it. So I probably would never set this one because it looks flawed or something. So same way with this piece of glass here. I wouldn't set that one as a bead in a cabochon. One other disadvantage, sometimes they're shaped unusually that are really difficult to set. Bought this strand one time without thinking very much, and you notice it's kind of football shaped from the side, and that's kind of a challenging shape to set if you're going to try and bezel set it. So I don't know if I've ever even, I think I probably did one or two of those just to try it, but since then I haven't. A couple of other cons. Sometimes they're really thick and heavy, and that can be off-putting for some people who don't like their jewelry to weigh a lot. And the last con, I think, is that sometimes people assume that if they're getting something that isn't a cut stone like a cabochon, that they're getting something of lower quality. And generally, the beads I've seen are pretty good quality and look just as good as the cabochons. But I generally will also let people know that they are beads that I've set that way, just so that they don't feel fooled if they ever have to take them out of the setting for some reason or whatever. But overall, I've had a good experience with bead setting, and I think it's something that is a good option for people with not a lot of money to start with. You can make some really beautiful pieces that way. And you know, once you sell those, then you can buy some more expensive cabochons. So give it a try. That was the bezel setting beads video. I hope you got some good information out of it. I appreciate you watching, so would you mind hitting the like button before you leave? That helps out a great deal. And don't forget to check out my Patreon, or if you feel like supporting me, buy me a coffee. There's a link at the top of the YouTube's main page for me. So thanks again for watching. Happy silversmithing. Take care.